Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent Makori. This is Africa 54. The European migrant crisis continues to be a major headache for the European Union. Britain's Home Secretary says the crisis must be tackled by making it possible to return migrants to Africa from Europe. Speaking in Malta at a migrant crisis summit featuring more than 60 leaders from Africa and the EU, Theresa May told reporters part of that equation calls for dealing with the criminal element that help the migrants make their journeys.
We need to break the link between people making the journey across to Europe and reaching Europe and being able to settle there. In order to do that, of course, we need to be able to return people to countries in Africa. That will be part of the discussions today. But also we need to smash the gangs that are actually the criminal gangs that are making money out of human misery.
Well, May says the EU summit has featured constructive discussions between the African and European leaders. She also says that they agree the keys to the African migrant issue are to stop those taking advantage of desperate Africans and to work to ensure that people don't feel the need to make the perilous journey to Europe in the first place. EU leaders on Thursday signed an emergency $1.9 billion trust fund agreement to support the effort. May says Britain alone pledged more than $300 million. Hundreds of thousands of migrants have fled to Europe this year, and more than 3,400 people have died making dangerous sea crossings to Europe this year. At least 14 people drowned Wednesday after a boat sank on a trip from northern Turkey to Greece. Now, for more insight on the migrant crisis, Joel Millman, spokesman for the International Organization of Migration, joins us live via phone from Geneva, Switzerland. Good evening, Joel. Welcome to Africa 54.
It's great to be with you.
Yes, now this Malta agreement, tell us about the most important element of those talks.
I'm sorry, what's the most important element of the talks in Malta?
Yes. Because there's a financial part of it, and also there are several elements there. Which one is that is really most critical when it comes to tackling this issue?
Well, the most critical for our point of view is a world effort to bring peace to the conflicted zones. You know, we know that's the Horn of Africa mostly and Syria that is dominating this migrant traffic across the Mediterranean. Almost everything else are smaller national groups that are following in behind. They're not necessarily fleeing the kind of violence that needs urgent intervention. Nigeria to some degree, but that's really the matter that we think is before the world right now is to bring a political settlement to some of these conflicted zones and halt the incentive, to get out the way of the chaos.
Yes. Now, given that, there are so many dimensions to this, but it's the first time, really, that the African leaders have met with the European leaders about this issue. Do you think this is going to make a big difference henceforth?
It should. I mean, African leaders like Gaddafi, if people don't really remember him as a leader, but he was African and he was dealing with this situation with the European counterparts, have talked to Europe about this for decades. I mean, this is kind of thing that governments, even ones that are hostile to each other, have always found a way to discuss. The U.S. itself, for 50 years was engaged in conversations with Cuba on migration matters. There was a great deal of cooperation. So there is precedent. I mean, I think that the Europeans and the Africans both want to be partners with each other and discuss these things with a sense of reality, not a sense of serious. Of course, we welcome these kinds of summits, but we think that this is pretty normal.
Now, in terms of restrictions within the European Union, what do you make of countries taking measures to kind of make it difficult for one person to cross from one country to another?
The thorniest problem right now. I mean, Germany was very generous in its attitude and its welcoming. And I'm not entirely sure that the other countries around, to the east of that, thought that Germany had thought it through carefully enough to understand what would happen. I mean, it's no different in the U.S. if Mexico had said, we invite everybody to come in from Latin America. Obviously they'd have to cross the U.S., and that would be something that maybe could have been coordinated a little more fully. But even then, the governments have been pretty flexible, so we're actually optimistic.
Well, Joel, thank you very much for your insights. Joel Millman is a spokesman for the International Organization of Migration. Now,